on Zoom today,
Yeah.
and nobody's listening.
Yeah.
Oh,
This table just never knows when to call me. I asked it. So I know a lot of you, but I don't know every single one. I am Karen Ebling. Some people go, oh yeah, I've heard that name, but I'm upside down. Oh, that's because I'm kind of upside down right now. Did y'all see me over here digging in my purse? I have this purse with 87 pockets in it and zippers and so on and so forth. Hold on.
I roll mine upside down.
It fell through. Okay, I was all prepared to be sophisticated here and it's my badge is falling into my bra, y'all. Okay, anyway. Is that close enough? Can everybody hear me okay? Ann, can you hear me? Because you said you couldn't hear, so I'm gonna make sure you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So, thank you, Ellen, for asking me to do this today. I have never been to Wednesday morning Bible study, and I just don't know what to do with that, you know? I actually have another commitment on Wednesday morning that I do, and just a lot going on in my life. So, you know, this has not been something I've always done, but y'all can probably kind of blame me if you don't like this book, because I remember last year I'm in a face-to-face book club with some friends I've been in for 20 something years, but I'm also in an online book club where of course you pay and they send you a book every month, and then they have online discussions or, you know, Facebook comments and all that sort of thing about it. And I received this book in my book club, and it was brand new. It had just come out, and I looked at it and I said, I guess I haven't learned that yet. Shauna Nyquist. I've heard of her. I think we used her at a retreat or something. Oh yeah, whatever. Well, whatever. And I actually tossed it aside for a while because I was busy. And then one day I picked it up and started reading it. And I am telling you all, this book hit me at a time in my life and in my place like nothing has ever hit me before. And it may not be the perfect book for you today. It may be at another time. I mean, there's all kinds of things to get out of it. But y'all, I mean, really, look at this. Here's what I do when I get excited about a book. I mean, can you see all the margin notes? I mean, they're just everywhere in here. I mean, end of chapters where I just get all fired up and I write a whole paragraph at the end of the chapter about what that lesson meant to me. I mean, it's just, this book was, you know, there I am like thinking all kind of things in the margins, and, you know, it's kind of crazy. It just really hit me that much. And I mentioned it to Ellen. There we go, just all over the place.
The camera here.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Ellen had other great ideas too, but thanks for bringing this into the study group, and I hope we can repeat it in a lot of places. And last week's lesson, and I have no idea what Ann said last week.
Neither does Ann, so that's okay.
Neither does Ann. Do any of the rest of you? No. But because I was kind of catching up with not just how the book was written, but how the study guide was done, I started back with last week's lesson. So we'll do a little bit of review of that. Was everybody here last week, or is there some people that didn't even hear the intro last week? Okay, that's all right, good. Okay, we'll do 2 lessons in one today. I don't know anything about your format and your how-to. I know you do joys and concerns at the end, but in the beginning, just jump in with all 4 feet. Is that it?
Yeah, let's pray.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's just pray to get it started. Ellen, will you open us in prayer this morning?
I will.
Thank you.
God, we are so grateful for this day. It is beautiful. It is a gift. Help us to receive it and live into it. And thank you for Shauna and her wisdom and the way she shares it with us, for how you are moving in her life and how she paints the picture of space being made for you. And thank you for Karen and how this spoke to her and how she use it in our lives, use us in one another's lives, and then use us in this world. Pray. Amen.
Amen. Yes.
Usually we kind of do an icebreaker and not that we need.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, this is Pam Johnson. So often we do an icebreaker, not every time, but after your question this morning or your statement about, you didn't know who liked it and you really liked it. I would be curious because it is kind of it's not quite the same format. It is a little bit different than our normal Bible studies. Personally, I'm really, really enjoying the book and I find myself stopping. But I think it'd be fun just to do a quick go around the room or a show of hands or something as far as who is enjoying the book thus far.
Yeah,
If we have
do
time to
that.
do that.
Because it's a vignette book, right? I mean, you just kind of read these chapters and you wonder if they all mismatched together. And at the end, you kind of go, oh, they kind of did. Yeah, it's very different. It's not a Bible study per se, even though, no, especially not the book. The Leader's Guide with this brings in some, and that's very different. I mean, Shauna has tended to be a little bit more in some of her lessons, but she's had a lot of change in her life. But yeah, I would be interested in knowing, just those of you that have got the book and started reading it, want to pass around and say, yes, true confession, I did, I didn't, it's okay if I didn't. I mean, who's got the little mic?
We did.
Okay.
Do you want to
Glad
say?
to know. And will you do
You-
me a
you read it
favor
last
and
week,
tell me
didn't
your names,
you?
because I know most everybody.
Just
but
say you didn't. I bet somebody else didn't either.
Tell,
And that
tell
way
us
you'll
your,
open the
tell us
website.
all your names. Yeah.
I-
If you can find it in your purse.
This is Jane Smith. I haven't read enough to know. I can't really comment yet.
That's okay.
See, and I bet somebody else.
This is Judy Forbes, and yes, I'm really enjoying the book. I find I can't really put it down because I want to know what happens next. Yeah, it's good. I really am enjoying it.
I already did my comment.
Okay. This is Carlene Chambers and I wasn't here last week, and last night I couldn't figure out where to start. So I didn't read anything yet.
The study does not follow the book exactly. Yeah, so just read the book and enjoy it, and
I mean, do we read part one? Let me comment on that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm in love with Shauna. I mean, we've done her work before, well, it was something about
Present over-
tangerines, and then we also
Present over
did
perfect.
present over, cold tangerines or something, and then present over perfect. I think she's solid as a rock. I love it.
Y'all need something to how to deal with change, because that's the only thing that's guaranteed life.
That's right. Only thing.
I like it. I'm not going through any big changes at the moment, except getting old, and that's kind of is a biggie, but,
counts.
but I do like the book. Yeah, I do like the book, and
And we've all just come through this huge
Well,
season of change.
yeah.
I mean, the
yeah.
world is going through
Yeah.
such change.
Woo, yes.
And I will mention, and I forgot to mention, I talked to Karen last night. I forgot to mention. Oh, yeah, I think I did mention that we talked about what happened with her father. We did talk about that
yeah.
last week, but some
We'll
people
go
here
over it
don't.
again.
Yeah, yeah. And I can talk, we can do it a little bit later till we get through this, about correlating the book with the lessons, because that is kind of confusing.
This is Karen Cosby, and I'm enjoying the book very much.
It's okay if you don't.
This is Susan Mowdy. And when I first started reading the book, I went too crazy about it because it was so vague. And I'm keep going, oh, she's saying all these things and all this trauma and how she's struggling so hard to get through things and how all these changes are place and she's moving, she's changing churches, changing cities, all these things are going on. And I looked her up.
And then you see.
And then I
Right, right.
then
It's an amazing story.
how it might have something to say to me and the change that take place in my life. And then it got a whole different
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
perspective.
good insight.
I'm Diane Galloway, and I have not read it.
That's all right. That's all right.
But we're glad you're here. I did read the first chapter, but I'm a little bit.
Oh, hello. It's Ann Parton, the Ann, one Ann. I did read the first chapter. I did not read the one for today. What I found for me is I would stop. and think back to things.
Yeah.
I don't have any big change. And you can see how this book could have been helpful
Right.
with some of the things that have happened in my life. But I think sometimes I prefer a
The
Bible study to a book like this.
Breaking out a lot.
Yeah.
What? Oh, okay. Okay. I don't talk much, so I don't have to figure this out. But I do find this book helpful.
This is Cynthia Mallion. I'm really enjoying the book. And a point in case I'm not going to be here next week and I still want to know what's going on in the book. So
That's right. You can read and if you want to, and you'll have context. Okay, some of you online, any comments?
Oh, I just got my book in the mail last night, so I started with chapter 2. Diving in the middle, and I'm loving it. So I'm gonna go back and reread the whole book probably.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm not able to read the whole thing because there seems to be a lot of it. But what I'm reading, I'm liking. I only read the very first story, Buzz the Beach, and it was like finding positive things, and who doesn't like really trying to find positive things? And so I really worked hard to find positive things yesterday.
Pat, hi.
I like, excuse me. I like the book. I hadn't read last week's portion, so I started at the beginning and read through what we were supposed to read today. And I'm like Susan. At first, the first part, I found her, like she said, very vague, and it was kind of hard to understand what she was talking about. But then as you go through into the next portion, things became a little clearer. And so far, I'm enjoying it.
Well, thank you so much for that. Anne, yeah, you want to say, oh, Anne, say the mic again. Back to it. Okay, I went through the leaders.
and the reading order is bizarre. That's all I can say. Day, all you were supposed to read was chapter 5 in the first section.
Okay.
And then I wrote it down and I meant to bring it and I went off without it. But I think for the next week, you're supposed to go all the way to part 5. And then you go back to parts 2 and 3. It makes no sense whatsoever. So like Karen said, just book.
Yeah. Read the book and that's right.
Because it eventually gets to, but it.
They kind of.
You're breaking up. We can't hear you.
Guide and it has a group study and a solo study in the leader's guide. It's meant to be used in small groups is how it's meant to be used, not as a leader's guide exactly. So it's meant to be used differently than we're using it. So the best thing to do is just read the book.
Just read it,
Just
just
read the
enjoy
book.
it. And they picked
And
out
not-
some themes from the book
Yeah.
and kind of set up the,
Yeah, don't worry about what
Yeah.
you read for the day today or next
Yep.
week or the week after. Just enjoy the
you'll
book.
have such good leaders, you won't need to, it doesn't matter, but just keep reading because it's a good story and a lot of insight. Okay, can you all online hear me okay? I just want to make sure about that. We have Heather Brackett who's joined us. Hi, Heather. Are in process. She not in yet? Okay. In the introduction to the study, it pulls out some quotes from the book, and one of them that is how she just kind of starts this whole thing, that every single thing that used to work stopped working all at the same time. And I know how a lot of us have said bad things happen in threes, like you get one thing that goes wrong and then you get news about a second thing that goes wrong and you're like, okay, I'm waiting for the third shoe to drop. Well, I think for her, she was like not just threes, but sixes and nines in terms of all the things that just really upended her life. And I think Anne was very insightful. You may or may not be in that season of life right now where a lot of things are upended, but you can probably all think back on times that it just seemed like everything was a mess, whether it was your family life, it was your job, it was your health, no matter what it was, the health of those people around you. It just all piled in at once. And you think, I can't do this anymore. What are some of the things that have changed in your lifetime? Just randomly throw out some ideas and I'll repeat them so everybody online can hear. What are some things that have changed in your life? Divorce. Yep. There are several of us, and I am one of them who has been through a divorce, and that's a tough time. What else has changed? Moving from one place to another. It might just be moving neighborhoods, since Anne does that often. I think I've known Anne for how many years now, and you've moved five or six times since then, and all in different neighborhoods. But some of you changed states, changed countries. I moved to Australia once in my life and moved back. You know, what else? Moving. Job losses.
Becoming a widow.
And job starts and job losses, right? Somebody online have something about a change.
Becoming a widow.
Becoming a widow. Oh gosh, yes, that is a huge change. But also getting married, right? I mean, you went from singlehood of some kind, whether it was living with your parents or just being wild and crazy on your own or something in between, but you went from a single life to a married life. I can remember before I got married, I had this full-size bed all to myself and thinking, I want to get married, but I really don't want to sleep with anybody else. I really like to do this and just not, have to bother with anybody else being there. But yeah, there's all kinds of changes when you go from single to married, right? Just like there are from going married to not being married, right?
Becoming a parent.
Becoming a parent. Oh gosh. I know one of my daughters just had a baby a few months ago, and she's still in that, oh, this is so wonderful stage. And I just go, yeah, wait till he's 14, 15. Oh, being a grandparent is a big change. I like it a lot better. I like it a lot better than being a parent. It is great. What else?
Health issues, especially as you age.
Health issues as you age, in your younger life too. Health issues of the people around you, your kids, your spouses, That's right.
Aging parents.
Aging parents, that's a big change. Yeah.
There was a time when I felt like peanut butter. So I had teenagers at home and parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Barbara, what about you?
A parent with dementia.
A parent with dementia.
It's
So,
real-
or any kind of really, really challenging issue like that, right? I
The
mean,
dementia was one that shocked the hell out of me.
it was, yeah, it kind of knocks the feet out from under you. Dementia can be tough.
You get phone calls from the strangest people saying, your dad is here.
Yeah, anybody else online or whatever? She mentions in the book about her friends changing. When she moved, she left a lot of friends behind. And I have felt the other way. I've had a lot of friends move away, and I don't like it. I mean, I had my little cozy world and my way I did things. And I just went through a period about 3 or 4 years ago where 4 or 5 of some really significant people in my life left the state. And I don't see them anymore. It's like, this is just not okay. I felt upended in that. The other thing she talks about in there is her square footage changed. Right?
Oh, yeah.
She moved from a big house in suburban Chicago with, double garages and all these kind of things to
The basement.
like a 800 square foot apartment in downtown Manhattan. Like, I think I would go nuts.
With 2 kids.
With 2 kids. Yeah. So her square footage changed, and we can laugh about it, but that impacts us a lot.
Yeah.
Barbara, you've been through that lately, just moving from your home into a apartment. Yeah.
I did keep a garage up.
Kept a garage because you got to have a place for your stuff. I know.
So Holly, yeah,
Yeah. Holly, you have something? Yeah. Okay.
Tell us your story, because some people weren't here last week.
Oh, I lived in Riverside, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, and we lived for 27 years. And we decided last year to sell our house and live in our RV full time. So I'm now living in I don't even know how many square feet it is. It's tiny, but it happens to be in the shop right now. So I'm in a 1-bedroom cottage, which I have a little more space, but it's not mine. So yes, I got that. Like I had to clean out my whole house and all my kids' stuff and it was amazing and it's been great. It has its challenges, but but overall, it's been a good positive experience for us.
You said it was freeing. You said it was freeing.
Very freeing because
Yes.
you realize all the stuff, everybody has stuff. Like I had all my stuff, like everyone, you have your stuff that you think you really need. And you realize when it's like, we have a lot of stuff in storage and we're going to go in a few weeks to clean out our storage unit, just to get rid of all the stuff in storage that we know we don't need. But it's very freeing to be really back to the basics, the bare minimum, keep it simple. And it's very freeing, very liberating.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Chris
So.
and I did the RV thing for not full time, but for about 7 years and learned to live in a tiny space for weeks on end when we would take longer trips. So yeah.
Yeah.
She mentions in this book all kind of little things like, your schedule changed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just kind of in a rut. And I always remember one time I was at a work meeting and a work seminar, and I was sitting kind of at the back of the room with some coworkers, and there was this great speaker up at the front who was giving us all kind of pointers on life and how life could be better if we would do this, this, and this. And he said, the one important thing is to get out of your rut, do something different. And the guy I was sitting next to in the back says, I love a good rut. I always remember that line because that really is kind of our truism, right? There are certain things that I don't care what this speaker is saying about we need to get out of our ruts. I love a good rut. But we do, we have our just little ways of doing things. And when life changes or upends, or you're just off for a few weeks or whatever, you don't have your coffee at exactly 7 o'clock every morning or whatever it is that, I can see Ann back there on high. Yeah, exactly. So we just get in those ruts. And so a schedule change. The other thing that is woven throughout this story of Shauna Nyquist, and you'll see it as you read it, is about her faith assumptions and what she believed for so long to be true that she began to start questioning and doubting. And I will tell you that some of you in this room may have gone through that, and you may not have gone through it. But there are a lot of people in the world right now going through that, and we need to recognize it. We need to recognize it in other people, even if it's not our own truth right now. There are a lot of people like Shauna who have come out of the hardcore evangelical movement of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s that are starting to say, hold on a second. I'm out in the world and I'm experiencing something different from what I was taught. And I'm not going to say us Presbyterians are not are immune to that, or Methodist or anybody else, or we all have that at some level. But how upending it must be that something you have taught and known and held close about the truths of your faith and who God is and how God works in the world and what the rules are, to suddenly become shaky for you. And I think that is one thing you will find if you read the whole book that's going on with her, is her faith being upended and learning a new way. This is not a spoiler, but I'll call it a spoiler alert. She went from being part of a very, very large, complex, suburban Chicago evangelical church where her father was the pastor, to her husband saying, I've decided I want to go to seminary and I want to go to Episcopalian seminary. So could you be as daylight and dark as those two? And the one I want to go to is in downtown Manhattan. Are you going with me or not? And suddenly she was thrust into this environment with Episcopalian seminary students and professors and a community of Episcopalians when she's like, oh, what is all this stuff? This, smells and bells stuff and liturgies and all these things that she had never been a part of and kind of upended who she was from her faith perspective. So that is a big theme of this book. So if it isn't a Bible study per se, like we want, it is a faith study. And it is about what happens when our legs get knocked out from under us in some way related to the church. And there are a lot of people, whether it's a discussion about racism or it's a discussion about LGBTQ people, or whether it's a discussion about dunking or sprinkling baptism. I mean, it can be all kinds of things, but to have your feet knocked out from under you for what you have always been told is gospel truth, and suddenly you start questioning whether it is or not, is tough. It's a tough place to be. So know that's one of the themes as you're reading the book. I think that's important. Any thoughts on that? Yes, Anne?
I do. What you're also talking about is familiarity. I've heard a lot of people, and I can think of one good friend who was Episcopalian, now Anglican, but loves that church so much because of the liturgy. It's that familiarity, and I've been Presbyterian all my life too, coming up with that liturgy that just infiltrates your thoughts, and it's just something that's always been there, and it either pulls you very much to the church as an adult, or I guess in some cases it sends you in the opposite direction because some people want to get away from it. But yeah, I can't imagine if you've grown up with it as she did. It's such a strong, or I'm sorry, going the other direction, not having it and going the other direction, that would be hard.
I truly believe that we get through divorce, we get through transitions of having kids, we get through losing our parents. We somehow or another, it's all the circle of life. But having your faith story upended can be one of the most difficult things to go to. And maybe a lot of us in this room have never truly experienced that, but I am really calling us to be aware of other people around us who are going through that and how that's affecting them, and to not think about just those big life events like divorce or marriage or whatever, losing a job being the only kind of things that upend us, but faith shaking is a rough one. I can see Ellen is itching to talk. Yes, Ellen.
So, gosh, I'm itching. And also theological challenges that life changes force upon us. Pat, I see Pat. You got something on that? Are you?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. A death or a sudden illness or a loss of capacity. It's like, where is God in this, and what do you do with it? And what I thought about God, I mean, I've been faithful and this happened, man, derailing. Yeah.
And sometimes there aren't recovery groups for that the same way that there are, or it's harder to find them the same way that there are for some of the other kind of life changes we go through. For those of you, oh, sorry, yes, somebody on the other end.
Related to the faith changing is losing a church home. She had both. And I mean, for me, I was part of a church home for 17 years where I was an elder, I was a sacrament chair, I was involved in Presbyterian women and Friends in Fellowship and Wednesday Women's Fellowship and just everything. My entire social life and everything was connected to that church. And then to lose that after 17 years, that's huge. I saw a therapist and said, I thought it felt like a divorce. And she said, oh no, honey, you're grieving. This is a death in your life.
Exactly. What a wise therapist. Actually, I think that's on page 3 of my notes here. So thanks for thinking ahead, Heather. For a lot of you in this room, some of you know me and know my personal story, and some of you don't. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to it here. A little over a year ago, my husband, Chris, was in a bicycle accident. He was an avid bicyclist. He was 45 miles into a ride one day and he hit a rough spot on the road. The bike flipped, he landed on his head and injured his spinal cord. And for the last year, we have been adjusting to life with him being in a wheelchair full time now. He is a quadriplegic. He doesn't have use of his arms and legs, not full use. We're getting therapy, we're doing what we can, but he doesn't have any functional use of his arms and legs. So he's totally dependent on someone being with him. I had to get someone to sit with him this morning so I could be here. So for me, I have become an almost 24-hour a day caregiver. And I didn't have this planned. You know, we are at a phase in life where our kids are gone and grown and gone from home, and I've got new grandkids, and we want to travel and have fun and have parties and all kinds of things going on. And my life got upended about a year ago. So I won't go too deep into that right now, but I wanted to give that as a context for as we're talking through this and you understanding a little bit why when I picked up this book midway through last year, I felt like so much in my life had been changed by a single event. Hers was many different events, but mine was a single event that knocked the breath out of me and made me question my schedule, my faith assumptions, my family structure. I was dealing with square footage issues. I was dealing with transportation issues. I mean, I could go through all of these things. What do I do with my going forward right now when everything has changed so dramatically for us? So I just wanted to give that context for some of you that may not know that as part of my life story. Shauna says in this book, change changes us. Change changes us. If you haven't gotten to this yet, the title of the book, I guess I haven't learned that yet. She had one specific little vignette about that, about her kids getting settled into the new schools in New York. And I think where they had come from, they had been taking Spanish classes and they got into the school and everybody was taking French classes and most of their peers were in second or third year of French and they were in the beginning of French and they were just like feeling left out and French is so much harder than Spanish and I don't like this. I don't like this new school and I'm ahead in some things and behind in some things. And her wisdom that came out of her parenting to them was, why don't we think of it as, I guess I just haven't learned that yet. You haven't learned French yet. And then she began to realize what she said to her kids. If any of you have kids, we've all done this. We've given our kids a wonderful bit of wisdom. And we said, ooh, ouch. I think I was just talking to myself. And that's how the title of this book came around. If you haven't gotten to that part in the book yet, it'll talk about it. The other thing, just in summary, if some of you don't know, is what happened in her life overall. Her father is, I almost said was, he's still around, Bill Hybels, and the Willow Creek Community Church in suburban Chicago, which is like mega church, not just in and of itself, but it has spawned and created many churches all over, I think, the world. And he has been known as a leader in teaching other pastors how to start new churches and how to grow their churches. And has just been a world-renowned writer, speaker, author, mentor, all these kinds of things like this. And kind of celebrity royalty in that type of church. In 2018, this megastar pastor, some women came forward and accused him of sexual misconduct with them. And not just one, but multiples did. And Shauna was grown at this point. She had a husband and 2 kids, but she was still very much in part of that church community that she'd always grown up in. That was in 2018, and it was all denied. And of course, it didn't happen and all these sorts of things. But in March 2019, it was all affirmed and confessed. And her father was honest with her and said it had happened. The church began to collapse. His big ministry and his book contracts and his speaking engagements all kind of went away. He was asked to resign. Her husband came forward and said, you know, it's okay with me because I was getting tired of this environment anyway. And I was about to tell you I wanted to go to seminary at this and I want to be an Episcopalian. or at least go to Episcopalian seminary, which she said was about as foreign, or she didn't even know how to spell Episcopalian at that point. Feel free to Google on Bill Hybels. It's Hybels if you want to read the whole story. She has stayed very quiet about it for a long time in her own grief and dealing with all of this. Had a lot of people reject her, people angry with her family, with him, and she was associated with him. So so just a difficult time. That's the underlying story in all of this, is how her world crumbled underneath her, and she moved to New York City. And then a year later, just after she landed in New York City and started to barely get settled, the pandemic happened. And all of New York, it was one of the first ones hit very hard. It all shut down. And she couldn't go to the store, and she couldn't meet any of her neighbors. And you know how difficult it was there for many, many months. So she dealt with that. She had some health issues in the middle of all of this. It was like, whoa, what else can go wrong for this Job woman, right? And that's the story. But I do encourage you to go read a little bit about this online and have a little more context for us. But Shauna's real wisdom about change is that change changes us. It just kind of messes with us all over. There's this fear of falling. There's this fear of failing. There's this fear of, I've always had it all together, and now people are going to see me cry or see me crack or see me not doing so well. She said it takes us back to square one, and we become a full-on rookie again. And I'm looking around this room and on Zoom, and most of us are at a place in life where we don't feel like rookies anymore. We've sort of been there, done that, right? I know how it feels. Oh yeah, that happened to me 10 years ago. Oh yeah, that happened to my neighbor 20 years ago. Let me tell you all about it. We're kind of, and I think you talked a little bit about that last week, which you felt somewhat expertise in, right? I felt like I had landed on another planet last year. Felt like I'd landed on another planet. I looked around me and I just couldn't figure out which way to turn, which way to walk, surrounded by wonderful people who would ask me, what can I do to help? And I didn't even have an answer to that. I was on such another planet. I have a joke. It's a one-liner that I think I heard a comedian say one time, but it became true for me. I felt like I was wearing somebody else's underwear. That weird feeling, like I can't explain it, but something just doesn't feel quite right now. I saw a great comedian do a routine on that. I loved it. And that thought has come to my mind, like on the outside, my clothes may look the same, but underneath this, I don't feel all right. Something doesn't fit right. It's something scratchy, There's a lot of downsides to change, isn't there? A lot of downsides to it. It's not fun, causes physical stuff. What are some other downsides to change that you can think of? Yeah, Barbara.
Your image of yourself.
Your image of yourself.
You lose it. But I'm a widow, but I'm no longer a wife.
Yeah, your roles change. When you became a widow, you were no longer a wife, right? Your roles change.
And you're not a parent. There's no more we are going to do something.
Exactly. And I'm facing that with my relationship with Chris right now. We don't do the things we used to do together. I'm going lots of places alone now. I had all kind of ideas and he had all kind of ideas, and we were kind of the Chris and Karen show for a lot of things. And I'm alone now. I can relate to that. I'm a widow, but not a widow. That's my truth right now. I'm being rawly honest about that. That is what I see. And you're right, Barbara. It's upending. It's not fun.
You get, and of course, I was married 44 years. I had a habit of saying, we are going to go to the store. We're going
The we word versus she's talking about the we. I'm trying to repeat some of it because I know you weren't on the microphone, but the we word versus the I word. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've
Big change.
not referred to myself as I for almost half a century.
That's right. That's right. What are some other downsides of change? Yeah.
That means it learns to do things different,
Learning to do things differently.
whether you
Mhm.
want to or not.
I guess I haven't learned that is the title of the book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And admitting that we haven't learned how to do that yet. I'm not comfortable going to Home Depot sometimes. Because Chris always went to Home Depot. I'd say, can you go to Home Depot? We need this, this, and this. And he says, yeah, I know 5 other things we need. So I'm going to make a quick run to Home Depot. And that's just not my favorite store. I don't know where stuff is. I don't know the difference between this and a that. How do I know? I mean, you get to the aisle and there's I mean, I might be comfortable in other stores, but Home Depot is just not my jam. And I'm part of a Facebook group of other wives who have husbands with spinal cord injuries. And I saw a woman post yesterday, I'm at Home Depot and I'm crying. And I suddenly knew what she was talking about. Right. It's like, you got to start over. You're a rookie again, right? That's tough.
I think maybe one other thing is
Yeah.
when something like this happens, you feel a loss of control.
Oh,
You know,
gosh.
like up until that point, you kind of felt like you were in control of your life. You had this plan and things were, and then all of a sudden something like this happens and you just realize how little control you have over your life.
Absolutely. And in the middle of all this, some of you know, we moved houses at the same time, which was already in work before his injury. So we were building a new house and we just had to finish it, which it's been a tremendous blessing because we were able to make it wheelchair accessible and all those kind of things we needed to do. God had this all worked out for us. But I now don't know what drawer things are in. I had some bay leaves and I was making something the other day and the recipe called for bay leaves and I know I have bay leaves, but I cannot find my bay leaves. And for me, that was like annoying because I got to get in the car and go to the store and buy bay leaves. I ended up not putting them in the recipe. But in any case, I mean, yeah, you're right. You're just starting all over with everything, your stuff, your possessions, your schedule. I'm going to go back to the schedule thing. I love a good rut, just like the guy sitting back in the room with me, it just matters. Our role in our family changes, doesn't it? That's not easy. You go from being a parent of at-home kids to being a parent of adult kids. And I'm waiting for somebody to teach the class on that. We are kind of missing the boat on a few things. I'm not doing it perfectly well, by the way. Have I confessed that to any of you? I'm not doing it perfectly well. Every now and then I say things and say, ouch, I should not have said that.
Would someone who is doing it perfectly well explain how that goes?
In reflection, I think we all know it was not perfectly well. But it changes and it upends you and you think that's the way it is. But there's also an upside to change in there. There's a lot of upside to change. What's good about change?
Well, I think the therapy that my daughter and I do with kids with autism,
Oh, yeah.
change for those kids is it is
So positive.
so upending. I mean, and just like one child that I have, I do telehealth with one particular child, and he was just having a meltdown when he got on because he was doing his homework and his dad forgot to tell him there was speech. Well, he was doing his homework, but he did not want to finish what he was doing because he was in that routine. And I think, about that rut you said, those kids love a rut. They don't want change. They don't. And he had the hardest time. And so we deal with kids that have meltdowns with little tiny changes and teach them a lot of different types of strategies that work for them. And there's not one strategy that works, for everybody. But we see how upending it is. And then the positive things we see are how they're learning to deal with change and with little things and then bigger things.
And that is especially hard for kids with autism, but wow, the joy that comes out on the other end. good always comes from new endings, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, I have something. So
Oh,
with
sure.
all this change and upheavals, you realize what you're capable of.
Oh, yeah.
Like you always think, I
Right.
could never do that. I couldn't, I couldn't, live each week not knowing where I'm going to be the following week. Like I need to know my schedule. I need to know my, but when it just like our change, sometimes I don't know where I'm going to be living next summer or next winter. And it's just nice to know that you can dig deep and learn something at our age as we age and embrace it and learn something and find that you're capable of it and you can do something else well. compared to,
Amen, sister.
you know,
Amen.
so.
Yeah, someone over here.
I think change helps us to, as we have recognition of things that we've lost, I think it helps us to better appreciate what we have and not take as many things for granted. And I think it also kind of is maybe a reminder of the importance of kind of just being in the moment as far as appreciating what we do have, what is the now, even though there might be sadness because of something lost. I don't think we take as many things for granted.
Shauna says in the book that change causes us to recognize the myth of control and the myth of independence.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's powerful. I mean, the myth of control and the myth of independence, I've had to learn this. I mean, if any of you know me, I'm all about, I got it, folks. I'm good. I know, Ann, you're smirking at me back there. But I'm good. I got it. But that's just a big myth. I don't got it, you know?
Well,
Yes.
one of the things I got out of this book when I was reading it yesterday was it's okay to be down. It's
It is.
okay to give yourself
Right.
permission. I don't usually do that. I usually am perkying up. And I thought, I needed to read that today. I did. It's okay. It's okay to feel lost and not know which way to go.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be more vulnerable, which I'm not.
Yeah. Me neither. Oh, no.
No, I'm not too much.
Not me.
But it kind of was refreshing. It's like
Absolutely.
he spoke directly to my heart.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things I have learned in my experience of this past year that I will share with you all is I have learned to say, I'm not okay. Oh, the first time those words came out of my mouth, I thought, whoa, Karen, what'd you just say? I have learned to say, people are always walking up to me, how you doing? Because they know I've been going through tough stuff, right? How you doing? And I have learned to say, I'm just okay. I'm not great. Or I'm not okay today. Or sometimes I say, you know what? I'm okay. And it's all kind of different voice inflections there, but read between the lines. I'm just okay is a good answer. Yes, the other Karen.
It's invigorating. When change can be invigorating, when you
Yeah.
find out you can do new things, it really is a positive thing.
Yeah. Another thing about this book, it's not a Bible study, but it's a study of spiritual thought and faith journey. Change is like spring. There's a death and there's resurrection. There's dead winter weeds and there's new flowers springing up. There's cold, harsh weather and this perfectly beautiful weather we've been having the last few weeks. We're in a season of the positivity of change right now. Spring has to bring that out in us. And this whole idea of the theme of death always brings resurrection. That is a deep, deep spiritual truth to carry with you no matter where you go, no matter which church you're going to, no matter which, affiliation you have, or whether you become one of the nuns, N-O-N-E, not N-U. Well, or maybe if you become an N-U-N also, but if you become an N-O-N-E nun, is that, and I will tell anybody that is the gospel. That is the faith journey. With all death comes resurrection of some kind. Ellen, you're ready to preach. What is it?
Well, I'm really not ready to preach, but
You have that look.
for me, it's a little bit like what Holly was saying about the freedom that change brings. And it's kind of been, I've heard it throughout this, but I'm a structure person. And when there's a lot of structure, there's not a lot of room for the spirit. It has to like weasel in on the edges. But sometimes it just all gets blown open and you see evidence of God's, presence in ways that you have not seen it. And that's, to me, it's huge. I'm about to go on a sabbatical. I don't really rest. I mean, I rest in small pieces, and I'm about to be resting for 3 months. I can't even say it.
And we're gonna
3
hold you
months.
accountable for
Yeah.
for resting.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna
Well,
hold you accountable.
Yes. And there's 5 weeks of it that are completely unscheduled. That's scary. That's scary. And there's a lot of room for me to have no idea how I'm even supposed to do this day. And so it'll be, there's
Hallelujah. You're gonna like it. One of the things about this not being a deep scripture study, but the people in this room and on Zoom all know your basic scripture stories. Where, most of us have been exposed to this some way or another throughout our lives. Think about all the stories of the Bible. We sit here and we read them and we know how they end. But the people wandering in the desert for 40 years in the middle of that story had no idea how it was going to end. And we could have sat there and whispered to anyone, don't worry about it. It's going to turn out okay. I've read this before, right? Jonah in the whale's belly, right? Esther, when she found out that all of her people were going to be killed, she was not having a good day. She was about to face some horrible change. And here she was being queen and left her thing and kind of living a weird life. And I mean, we just finished that study in Martha Circle recently, and there was a lot of impact about that. Think about Paul. I mean, Paul was writing these letters to these churches, these new churches, and he was saying, you're never going to have an impact on the world. Nothing's good's going to come out of this. And look at us here today in Canyon Creek Presbyterian Church. If it hadn't been for the churches at Corinth and Ephesus and all those others, the gospel probably would not have spread the way it did, and we might not be sitting here right now. But Paul was right in the middle of that story, and he was railing at these people and saying, this is not going to work out if you don't straighten up. And they straightened up a little bit, but they didn't straighten up perfectly, and it still happened, didn't it? Right? That's the Bible study of all this. Yes.
You were saying about the resurrection part. And one thing that really, really stuck out to me was a year ago, Easter, when Andy was talking about what Good Friday and Easter tell us is that the worst thing is never the last thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. That really stuck out to me.
The worst thing is never the last thing. Yeah.
I liked that. And the other thing, I know you're going through something that most of us could never even imagine. And I've gone through some things that a lot of people cannot imagine as well. And one thing I absolutely despise is when people say, oh, I could never do what you're doing. What? You don't have a choice. It's not like I said, hey, I'd really like my husband to be a paraplegic so I could take care of him. Or I'd really like my son to have extreme autism so I could go back and forth from hospitals. That's something I really love to do because I can. No, it's not a choice you make. It's something that happens and you just have to, right?
Very insightful. I'm talking to my therapist about that right now. There I go, being vulnerable. Okay, right here in my notes, it says, watch the video. And I will tell you all, I left the video at home today. Sitting on my kitchen counter. That's okay, we got plenty to talk about. I know which drawer it is. No. Ann says, you want to come up and get it? And I said, no, I'll wing it. I'm going to figure this out, but we got plenty to talk about and we're going to be just fine about the video. But I haven't
figured it out yet. Winging it is her specialty. So.
Winging it. I was blessed with the winging it gene. Instead, I'm going to read a couple of sections out of the book. May I do that instead? Chapter 5 was one of the chapters that it suggested you read for the week, but if you didn't get to, I'm going to read it. Excuse me while I get my reading glasses. I think I brought them. If I didn't, I'm in trouble. I can kind of read, but not great. Right. Oh, yeah. I will do that. They're different ones. I got it. I'm good. I'm going to get most words right. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Okay, chapter 5 is called She. And if you've got a book, feel free to read along. Just when Aaron and I had made a tentative fledgling step into a new way of living in our marriage and in our town, something truly terrible exploded in our lives. And at the center of it were my dad and our church. While it's not my story to tell, it completely shattered me. I didn't know how to talk about it, and mostly I still don't. There are things in our lives that carve us so deeply, language fails us. This one did that to me for several reasons. One, I didn't understand it at the time, but my own identity, not my public identity, but my inner one, the set of beliefs I carry internally about myself in this world, was unhealthily braided together with my dad and our church. I understood myself almost entirely in the context of their stories and identities, not my own. Again, this is a weird thing to talk about publicly, especially because I had at the time a public identity and a voice of my own. I hadn't used my maiden name for 20 years. But what this crisis revealed was the extent to which my inner architecture was built on the story of our church and the story of my dad. There are all sorts of reasons for that, and certainly it's not uncommon for the children of parents who have notable lives in some way become absorbed into that narrative or identity. The architecture of my inner world crumbled. Who was I? What world was I living in now? How could this be a reality? How could this be my real life? As with any trauma, and we've talked about quite a few different types of traumas today, there is that super weird side-by-side processing where you're a shell, a ghost, where there's a cavern inside you where your heart used to be, where you can't sleep and sometimes can't breathe and can't imagine having to live in this new, terrible world. You're amazed that people even recognize your face because you know that what's happening inside you is unrecognizable. That you're so far off the map, you can't even imagine there are words or symbols to mark it. And then also weirdly, right at the same time, you're going to your son's 5th grade graduation. You're talking and laughing and unloading the dishwasher. You're going to therapy, reading, writing. You're doing all the things that healthy people do to get through trauma and crisis. You talk about it with your friends. You cry with them. This crisis launched in me an excavation that has spanned years. Hundreds of thousands of words written, an ocean of tears. Let me tell you where I've landed. Somewhere else entirely, another planet maybe. A planet beyond the events, beyond language, altered entirely. This crisis forced something like a transubstantiation. Can I say that? Is it sacrilegious? She asked. I took my own self apart, bone by bone. I asked every question, ripped every seam, dismantled every assumption and agreement until it evaporated into dust. Where did I land? At the bottom of the ocean, somewhere behind Jupiter. I'm a tiny bird on a branch, a silver fish in the cold ocean. I'm someone else and something else entirely. The crisis didn't alter me, but what came after did. And here I am, expectations and sweet sentiments burned away like flesh scraped from bone. I'm flinty and strong and a little weird and a little wild because I traveled all the way down to the elemental parts of myself. And what I found there was this. I'm not the first daughter to buy into a story that her existence is wrapped up wholly in her powerful dad. This happens. It happens even more extensively when your dad is a public person, especially when he has a powerful emotional and spiritual connection to thousands of people. No one says, hey pal, seems like your dad's voice is a little too loud in your ears. Of course it is. It's too loud in all our ears. This is the water we swim in. What water? All of a sudden I could see the water. I could see the extent to which I had built the architecture of my life on someone else's identity. Here's confession. I would have happily lived that way the rest of my life, cocooned by an identity and story that had kept me safe and stable all my life. Instead, for a while, it felt like walking around without skin. I think I called it walking around in somebody's underwear. Utterly vulnerable, untethered in the deepest way. The world felt terrifying. I felt lost, unmoored, unfamiliar to my own self. But what I found there in the darkness, there at the bottom of the cold ocean, there surrounded by the bits and bones of the self I used to be, was another self. She'd been there all along, but until now I never needed her. She was waiting in the wings, and all of a sudden I needed her desperately. She is my next self, the one I've been waiting to be all along without even knowing it. Thank God for her. This is the story of how I found her, or maybe how she found me. So what struck you in the feels, as they like to say? What really dug at you about listening to that? A certain phrase or a certain concept? I'm sorry, Susan, say again. The depth of her pain. Yes.
We talked about earlier, been widowed.
Yeah, we're getting the mic to her.
Yeah, it made me think about for those of us who have been widowed, how you feel like you have you're very strong, your own identity. But once you've lost that person, you realize how much of you was, like she said earlier, a lot of your identity is no longer exists.
A lot of our identity no longer exists, and she used widowed as the example. Yes, Barbara.
Would be a lot like a royal family being overthrown for a republic. She's no longer the princess. And all the rules changed. She's just an average citizen now.
The royal family being overthrown.
Uh-huh.
She's just a princess. Or, I kind of have a thing for royalty, and kind of one of my little things I like to watch. And I decided to start listening to the audio version of Prince Harry's book, Spare. And I might have had my opinions about Prince Harry, but boy, this is a powerful book. Right or wrong, good or bad, it's a powerful book, and he's reading it, and to hear his voice do it. So yeah, I mean, those are big upending things like that. A prince that doesn't live in the palace anymore. Ellen.
For me, the is holy ground. That's what I mean, the whole thing felt like holy ground. Her going into herself and finding who God truly created her to be. And that's where you meet God in the holiest
Holiest of holies.
sense. Mm-hmm.
The holiest of holies. That is the inner chamber, right?
Mm-hmm.
The holiest
that-
of holies. Yes.
That's what I was gonna say when she said, thank God for her. Like,
She
there
made
was
a
somebody
purpose.
else in
Yeah.
her that never would have been exposed had she not gone through this. And she's just like thanking God for this. So God's always there through the good, the bad, even though you don't see him, you don't feel him, he's there. And she said, thank you for this. So that's what struck out.
This week's video lesson, now that it's an hour and 10 minutes into this, I'll tell you the video lesson is a little bit about the process of making it through. walking through the darkness to get to the holiest of holies, right? In the video, she talks about we can make it through by telling each other the truth. I remember when Chris was in the hospital for 10 weeks after his accident. Well, some of you may not know, I work for Grace Presbytery, and we have about 225 pastors in Grace Presbytery, and I probably know 150 of them by name, and a lot of them pretty well. But I had a chaplain I'd never met before come into the hospital and said, do you need a chaplain? May I call someone for you? And I kind of flippantly at that moment, because I wasn't in a good place, said, nope, I got about 250 of them. I got a lot of people to talk to. Every one of you in this room have a lot of people to talk to, but you got to be ready to be there. And I have been surrounded by loving friends, wonderful family, lots and lots of pastoral care. And now finally, I'm actually paying somebody to talk to me because I need to be heard, and I need to be heard on different levels. And she talks a lot about that. We can make it through by telling each other the truth. And, you know, there's levels of vulnerability in doing that. I may tell Ellen or Anne, very dear, close friends of mine, a truth that I might not tell one of the others of you because I don't know you very well. That's just how we are as humans, right? But as I've begun to process this, and she talked a lot about this, that you have to find the ones you will talk to. You have to find the ones that you are willing to be accountable to, because I'm telling you, there's some people that gave me advice that I wasn't ready for it. No, thanks. I mean, I hear you. You're telling me I should go get a pedicure. Well, thanks. Bye. You know, I mean, I went through that a lot, and you reach a point where you're more willing to tell the truth. So think about where Shauna Nyquist has become with all this. This book was published in 2022, and I gave you that timeline of this truth came out about her father in 2018. He admitted that in early 2019, she and her husband moved to New York and uprooted everything, put a lot in storage, got rid of a lot of things, sold their car. She's great in here about talking about learning to walk all the time in New York. When she said, the best image is she says, I used to pull up to Costco in my Suburban and could buy anything I wanted. And now I can only carry what I can pull in my little pull cart that I have, you know, and live in 800 square feet with a tiny refrigerator. I don't know if I can do it. Anyway, but think how long it took her to tell her truth to the entire world, people. She published this book, and I'm not there yet. You know, I don't think I could write a book about my life right now because there's some things I'm still holding close. But I will tell you some of my truths right now. I'm willing to do it with this group. One of it is this is hard. It's really sucky hard. It's just sucky hard. I'm in a role I didn't ask for, one that I would have never selected by choice. Just, I've always kind of joked with some of my family members that are in the medical profession. I'm glad there are people like you, because I don't like blood. I don't like needles. I don't like urine. I don't like any of this stuff. And here I am, right smack dab in the middle of it. I did not ask for this. And it's hard. Not my gift. I'm doing it. I'm doing it with clenched teeth at times. I admit that when people tell me to take care of myself, that for me right now, that feels kind of like scolding sometimes. I feel judged. Like, do I look that bad? You know, do I need a haircut? Are my roots showing that bad? I mean, I take it as criticism, and that's not the right way, but I'm truth telling right now. I want everything to be back the way it was. I want healing, and it might not happen. Shauna talks about in the video about finding your necessary scaffolding. Think about that. She had a view out her little apartment window of a building that was under construction and how they had to put scaffolding around it while they were doing the construction. It made her start thinking about the idea of scaffolding and necessary scaffolding, and that metaphor in our lives of what scaffolding do we need when we're going through, because this section is about getting through it, right? Whatever the it is, the big change. What comes to your mind in your life right now, or something that maybe has happened at some other time in your life? What was the necessary scaffolding? Good friends, very much so.
I think.
Patience,
you-
right? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like
somebody
you
on mine.
said, professional help.
Yes,
um,
professional help. I finally broke down and did it. Didn't think I
For
needed
me-
it for a long time, but I did. Yeah,
For me, both therapeutic and medical,
yeah, absolutely.
medicinal, I guess is the right word.
Both. And admitting that it's both. Necessary scaffolding. Our faith. Even if it feels shaky and some of your assumptions are changing. Acceptance. Maybe for you, it's exercise or some form of something physical.
The Bible.
The Bible, just picking up the Bible and reading a psalm, whatever it is for you.
to you differently, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Than it ever
my daughter-in-law last Christmas gave me a beautiful illustrated book of the Psalms. It's just each one of the Psalms is just printed, but has beautiful pictures in it. One of those coffee table type books. And it has meant so much to me. Just the comfort of scripture. Yeah, necessary scaffolding. Showing up at Canyon Creek Presbyterian Church. I don't always make it. Last Sunday morning, I woke up and our intention was that Chris and I were both coming. And we didn't make it. And we didn't make it at the last minute. And I've said many times that I pull up in the parking lot here. And for me, I take a big sigh and feel like I'm in a comfortable place. I feel like she talked about her cocoon. I feel like I'm in my cocoon here. And the rest of the world doesn't. Parking lots of other places I pull up to over the last number of years have not felt like cocoons. They felt like places I didn't want to go into. I'd pull up in the hospital parking lot and I didn't want to go in again. Sometimes I pull up in the parking lot of where I work and I don't want to go in the building. You know, there's just stuff going on. But at Canyon Creek, I will tell you, for me, it's very comforting. What are other necessary scaffolding now that we've talked about some of those?
Walking and praying.
Walking and praying.
Like,
Yeah, Ellen, you do
I
that
mean,
a
for
lot.
me, it's been, throughout COVID, that was this rhythm that was sustaining. And in the last, I don't know how many years, the deal about breath prayer, I mean, that will be scaffolding going forward. It certainly was through COVID.
Sure. I told a couple people that Ellen had kind of asked me last minute to teach this class today, like, Karen, I can't believe you take on this stuff. But this is life-giving to me, and Ellen knows that. Because first of all, I have to prepare it and study it and read it and think about it. And always when I do, I go, oh yeah, reminder, Karen, it's just all in the preparation. But I love doing this. I just love it with all my heart. And it is life-giving to me. And I will drop all the other things I'm doing to be able to have an opportunity like this. And that's not the same for everybody. Some people, this is just, don't ask me to do that. But I'm telling you what works for me.
Well, Karen, it's life-giving for us, and I have truly, truly missed you, and you are such an amazing teacher, and I'm just really, really happy you're here.
One of Chris's doctors calling. Okay, I'm busy right now.
Did you hear, Melanie?
Yes, I did hear Melanie. Thank you, Melanie. Sorry, I got distracted by trying to find my phone in the bottom of my purse. But I did. Thank you, Melanie, for that. That's really special. I was hearing it and trying not to cry. The other thing real quickly that she talks about in the video this week, and there's some chapters in the book about it, you can read it, is she talks about her body and how for many years she ignored things from her body, put off doctor visits, didn't always get as much exercise as the doctor told her she needed, let her weight gain come on. I mean, you know, all these kind of things like this. So she talks a lot about body image and about we give so much to others. One of the best parts is she talks about a child coming running into your room in the middle of the night when there's a thunderstorm. And the child is worried and afraid. My granddaughter came into my room a few weeks ago when she was staying with me, and she said, "I'm afraid, I need a mommy." Her mommy was not there, but just the fact that she said, "I need a mommy," just melted my heart. So of course I hug her and love her and tell her everything's going to be fine. And I think of all the tender words I possibly can think of. And Shauna kind of pokes us on that. We say, we cuddle and talk softly and say everything will be better tomorrow. We give a sense of safety. We give necessary scaffolding to that child. We give gentleness, tenderness, and hope. Why don't we talk to ourselves that way? When we're afraid, when we're worried, when we're going through stuff. You said she talked about the she put it in the third person. And I'm having to learn to talk to myself in a third person, like, "Hey, you, hey, I got something to tell you, Karen."
Mhm.
And there's some joy in that. Thinking about my body's natural rhythm, recognizing that I get insomnia at 3 a.m. sometimes. So, yeah, there's a group of us that say we're going to start a 3 a.m. chat group because so many of us are awake then. Knowing what your natural rhythms are. Mine is getting up and being alone early in the morning with my cup of coffee and my piece of toast. I know I shouldn't be doing carbs so early, but it feels good.
Tony,
Yes, Heather.
I'm 46 years old, and there are some times that I call my mom and say, "I just needed to talk to my mommy."
Absolutely. Prince Harry talks about that in that book, The Spare, how he wants to talk to his mummy.
My son, my younger son, back in the spring, he had just graduated from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts, and he had his whittling badge. And so their gift as they went across was a big, I don't know if you call it a pocket knife or switchblade, I don't know, a knife with his name engraved on it. And 2 hours later, my husband was running into the ER after he snipped his thumbnail right down the center and all the way to his bone.
Oh no.
So he had to redo the whittling badge. But while I was cleaning up all the blood in the bathroom, I had to call my mom. I'm like, "Mommy, I don't know. My son's going to the hospital." And
Yes.
those are those times.
Karen, one of the things that the scaffolding thing and she, you know, that we've talked about it for years. If you know me very well, little L is she, and knowing that little L is who she is, that she is wise and, you know, and that she has these good and caring for her. That's what I hear you saying. And that's, yeah, as I was thinking more like the scaffolding, it's like, I'm not doing this alone. I'm doing it. Little L is there. And that's where I meet God, you know, and it's like, that's the very truest self. So I think that's a huge visual, to help with the scaffolding.
The therapist that I'm talking to right now hit me in the feels, as they like to say. That's kind of a way of saying it. Hit me right between the eyes when she said, "How often do you pray for yourself?" And I said, oh, but you know, now and then. No, I mean, no, really, like pray for yourself and even do it in third person. You know, she said, one of the things about prayer is that when I pray for Karen Cosby sitting here, Karen is hearing me pray for her, and there is healing in that hearing. She said, you know, Karen, if you're not quite ready to pray for yourself, then talk to the ceiling fan. And she said, tell the ceiling fan up there at the top of your room that you want to say that you hope Karen gets to feeling better soon. And, you know, work your way toward this deep conversation with God. And do it in third person. Try that as an exercise. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. There's part of my truth, right? Let's end with this, and I want us to have a little bit of time for joys and concerns. I hope y'all didn't mind not having the video today. In the book, there's just a wonderful scripture here from Isaiah 43. And it comes from the Message. And in this particular passage, God has a role and we have a role. This is the prophet Isaiah speaking with the voice of God. So God is talking to us, but God is saying, I'll do this, you do this. I'll do this, you do this. And that's one of these ways of talking to the she, right? God is going to do this, and Karen, you need to do this. And God is going to do this, and Karen, you need to do this. Let me read this to you. This is from the Message, Isaiah 43, 18-21. And think about what our role is and what God's role is. God speaking. Forget about what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert. Be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out everywhere. Don't you see it? There it is. I'm making a road through the desert, rivers in the Badlands. Wild animals will say thank you. Because I provided water in the desert, rivers through the sun-baked earth, drinking water for the people I choose. The people I made especially for myself, a people custom made to praise me. Let's close our eyes for just a minute and listen to this meditatively. God says, I am going to do something new. I'm going to make a road in this endless desert where there's not a road right now. There doesn't seem a way forward. I'm going to make rivers where it's dry. Provision for what we need, no matter where we are, no matter what we think is coming next or what we don't know is coming next. I'm going to make just really basic stuff like drinking water. Drinking water is a form of sustenance while we wait. And what does God ask of us? God starts by saying, forget about what has happened. Forget about the past. Don't dwell on how things used to be. Be alert and be present. What does that mean? Be alert. Be alert to see around you how God is in the hands and the feet and the faces and the voices of others. Be present. Like, get yourself ready for this new thing. See it. See and acknowledge what God is doing. And then God says, the people I made especially for myself, the people custom made to praise me. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Amen. Thank you for letting me do this today.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing your
Well-
truth with us.
Yeah.
did you see my messages?
And I'm gonna let you take over for joys and
I'm
concerns.
doing Bible study.
Or Ellen or whoever is doing it.
The what?